Welcome to the Fast Times podcast. My name is Adam Nathan. I run an AI company here in San Francisco, and I'm here with my good friend Tom Wolf, who's a recovery advocate and major player in our political scene. And we're here to talk about what's happening in San Francisco, what's happening in California, and how it affects things nationally. Times are changing quickly, and the point of this podcast is just to reflect on what's happening in the news every day as the world rapidly shifts around us and help you keep up. Today we're going to do three things. First, we're going to do a report card and grade the Lurie administration on its first 2 months in office. Then we're going to do a deep dive into the executive director that Mayor Lurie signed on homelessness and drugs. And finally, we're going to talk about the hot mess that is the National Democratic Party and what we can learn from what's happening here in San Francisco to help fix the track record of at least my party on the national stage.
Right. There's lots of stuff to talk about. The mayor kind of is off to kind of a fast start, I would say, getting some things done. It sure helps to have a more cooperative board of supervisors than we've had in the past. A lot of that obstructionist, performative politics that it's been plaguing San Francisco for the last 4 to 8 years seems to have waned, right? And we're kind of moving on to solutions. And I think it's because things got so bad for a minute in this town that it literally kind of got brought to its knees, and we're really trying hard to come out of that and kind of rise from the ashes once again.
Well, yeah, let's talk about the mayor and his administration on 5 key areas. Let's talk about drugs, homelessness, public safety. Let's talk about housing. Let's talk about downtown. Let's talk about small business. And then I think finally, but most importantly, vibes.
Right.
So I'm curious, Tom, because you're so deep in the recovery space, like how would you grade him on drug crisis and homelessness?
Well, you have to consider that the prior administration, I would have given a D-, right, on these issues. So for Lurie, I've given like a solid B+ coming out the gate because there's always room for improvement, right? Look, the fentanyl state of emergency that he got passed, that was huge. That let everybody know that the city's number one priority to get itself turned around is to figure out the bullshit that's happening on the street. We've got somewhere between 4,000 and 8,000 people out there. Most of them are using fentanyl and meth, creating all this chaos. So the fact that he got that passed and then announced his next measure the day before yesterday around kind of reforming homeless policy in San Francisco and certain aspects of drug policy is super refreshing, and it's a big departure from kind of the permissive harm reduction approach and the housing first only approach. And while housing first can play a role, it's not the only thing that's needed to treat homelessness. You actually have to have things like recovery housing, which he's going to be focusing on, expanding treatment, triage centers, shelters, clean and sober shelters, and also taking a step back from some of the harm reduction stuff like public distribution of meth pipes. Like, I'm sorry, as a former drug user on the street, that is enabling, right? If someone coming around in a wagon handing me a clean crack pipe and some Brillo for the screen for my pipe, they're basically giving me everything but the drugs, right? You're giving me foil and straws to smoke my fentanyl. Whether you smoke fentanyl, snort it, shoot it up, it doesn't matter. It's equally dangerous any of those ways. So the fact that we're taking a step back from that sends a message that we're refocusing the city on recovery, which is what we really need to do.
Yeah, and I think moves like that are also symbolic in what they say to drug users and drug dealers, that San Francisco is not a city you can come to anymore and just get free and easy and cheap access to drugs. And I think even just kind of the messaging of that tells other people that like San Francisco is moving in a different direction. I think the same thing is true for public safety. You know, I hate that Democrats for like the last couple of years have always been like, oh, you don't see the stats. You like the numbers show that actually, crime is down, because public safety is a feeling, it's a vibe. And someone's sense of safety on the street matters, I think, way more than what any statistic says. And I think his moves to invest in, a new SFPD station in Union Square and downtown. Recently, he parked a truck at 16th and Mission, which is an area I go through all the time. And like it fucking cleared the area out. And for years, I walked to the BART station there and I'm like, what is going on? Yeah. Why does it feel like we've just given up on public safety in the city, that we just seem to permit this from happening? Because we certainly have the resources, we have the staff, we have the money if we wanted to. And I'm so happy to see him doing things that show that, yeah, there is a different future we can create with the resources we have right now. So I would give him, an A- really on drugs and public safety, because I think both the investments in new approaches besides harm reduction. You and I both know people who work in the office. We know the mayor personally, and I know that their theory is let's first just get people off the streets into the system. And so trying to stand up 1,500 shelter beds within 6 months to me is the exact right first move, because you can't help people get to long-term independence until they first are clean and sober and off the streets. And I think that also impacts everyone else who lives in the city who isn't homeless and their sense of what's going on.
And they're not just doing the shelters, they're beefing up the Homeward Bound program and the Journey Home program, where they're giving people bus tickets and plane tickets to send them home. These are things that we kind of had let go in the pandemic that are coming back now. And then there's one thing about public safety that I think it's really important to say. So people on the far left have been saying crime is down, crime is down, crime is down. We don't need more police. We actually need to defund the police. That was the narrative for the last 4 or 5 years. In San Francisco, I really want to stress this point, the way they report crime, okay? They talk about violent crime, robbery, larceny, auto theft, car break-ins, but they leave out felony drug dealing, felony drug possession.
Why is that?
Because those aren't reported. It's not like someone calls 911 and says, hey, there's a drug dealer out here on the corner selling drugs. No, those dealers get busted by the cops. So that data gets tracked separately. But if you included that data, that's literally thousands of arrests a year and hundreds of felony charges a year that don't get counted in the crime stats, that then all these newspapers and media sites parade around when they talk about crime is down. And it's not really just San Francisco. Most cities report their crime that way. So I really want to stress that. So when we talk about public safety, there's a reason why Lurie's out there saying we need to fully staff our police department. There's a reason why he supports the police and why they play a vital role, because there's a lot more shit happening out there than what gets reported.
Well, I think that's the case of so many dysfunctional policies. They actually all started as good ideas that were often pretty narrow in the problem they were trying to solve in their context, and they often get extrapolated to use cases and geographies and situations where they're not relevant anymore, and twisted by different interest groups into being something that they're not. Harm reduction, which is totally not working these days, started as a very effective way to reduce the transmission of AIDS from drug dealers living in San Francisco, and now it's basically used as this idea of like everyone should have autonomy over their body if they're on the street. Of course, if I was caught using drugs in a club in San Francisco, I would get arrested and prosecuted. But if I lived outside for 30 days, then all of a sudden I can do whatever I want and kill myself, even if it affects other people.
It's some weird libertarian streak. And I think Dr. Keith Humphreys from Stanford talks about that, about there's a libertarian streak running through the progressive policy within harm reduction between San Francisco and up to Seattle. And that's why cities like Portland and Seattle and San Francisco have so much chaos, because there's this belief that, that's their choice if they want to shoot dope, even unto death. And I'm sorry, I think that's bad for the community. It casts a pall over entire neighborhoods. It's literally brought cities like San Francisco and Portland and Seattle to their knees.
Yeah, and I think the benefit of bringing in an outsider like Lurie is, one, he's able to see this bullshit as bullshit, and he's not caught up in a narrative that he has to promote in order to get a next job. And I think he's brought in people around him who are also similarly common sense. And I think he knows he has to deliver. I think he knows that if he does not clean up these streets within 6 months to a year, he's not going to get a second term. And so he knows he has to deliver. He knows what people care about. And so he's willing to throw out sacred cows, even if they're the status quo line of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, in order to show results for the voters of the city.
Yeah.
What do you think? What would you give him on housing?
Well, I'm going to give him an incomplete, only because it's been 2 months. And the thing is that I know that like Supervisor Mahmoud has been working on streamlining the permit processing and whatnot. I think they need to go back and revisit some of the stuff that Aaron Peskin put into place before he left office.
Let's rip it out.
Around putting height limits on what you can build on the waterfront. I mean, that's crazy. And the people argue, well, there's earthquakes and all that. And I'm like, well, an earthquake, whether you build a 6-story or an 8-story apartment, an earthquake's not going to make that much of a difference.
Yeah.
Right? But you can house how many more families if you do that, right? And create some affordability. So I'm optimistic. I mean, Lurie seems kind of like he's a pro-business, pro-housing, pro-public safety, at least as part of his agenda, right? That's kind of what he ran on. So I'm optimistic that the Board of Supervisors, which is now 6-5 moderate, will support most of that stuff to try to get people back into the city. So, but it's just too early for me to give him a grade.
Yeah, I mean, I think the permanent stuff is a great start, but I don't, and the problem with housing is I don't think there's the same kind of majority for housing in the same way there's a majority for cleaning up the streets. I think there's a lot of people who live in the city that don't want it to change.
Yeah.
And I don't hear Lurie getting out there as much being pro-housing as he is, being pro-recovery, for example. And that worries me because I think the number one thing we can do to make San Francisco more affordable, to create more jobs here, to make it more equitable for different types of people is to build more housing. Like it's really clear that more housing leads to lower costs. And the fact that we don't have enough housing here in San Francisco and New York City are why these cities are strangling themselves. And housing takes a long time to build. The permitting process is long no matter what. And I wish he was out there just like advocating, talking. I hope he's doing this behind the scenes, but I wish he was even publicly messaging it more of talking to developers, especially for big projects in places like Van Ness and Market Street, places where other people don't live, where we can build big towers, thousands of units, and asking those developers, like, what do you need to make this project net positive in San Francisco? What do we need to do to get shovels on the ground here? I don't see him being as pro-housing as he is on other issues, and that worries me because housing takes years to develop, and if he doesn't start now, and if he's not as aggressive on it as he is on other things, like, I don't think that the city's gonna get cheaper, and I worry for my company's future, for my kids' future, because San Francisco doesn't, we can't lead unless we're able to bring more people here to fill the jobs, to grow the economy. It's a virtuous cycle, and I don't know, it's incomplete is fair, but I give him more of a B- just on messaging alone.
Right, and the thing is, and so I agree with you, right? And I think most people across the spectrum agree that in cities like San Francisco, we desperately need more affordable housing, right? Rent is $2,500 a month for a one-bedroom apartment. Because what's happening is that because we don't have that housing, and because of other factors that have attracted a large population of unsheltered homeless to this city, you have a choice. You're left with a choice as a renter or even a homeowner in San Francisco. Either you allow the city to build and support the city building, like you said, high-rise towers that can house thousands of people, or you get comfortable with 8,000 to 20,000 homeless people living in your city. And
well, those, as you know, the people who are chronically homeless on our streets are not people who suffer from they're not on the street for economic conditions. They're on the street. There are people in San Francisco who can't afford to leave here and become temporarily homeless, but they tend to relocate. They go sleep on their uncle's couch. They move to a cheaper area in California or to a lower cost state like Nevada or Arizona. The people on the street are there because they have either a mental illness or even more commonly a drug problem.
Right. But they were housed at one point somewhere. And that's one thing that like we all recognize. And so while we don't necessarily want them all to be housed here in San Francisco, I mean, look, if you go out to Bayview Hunters Point, the people that are out there experiencing homelessness, they're from San Francisco, right? The people in the Tenderloin, not so much. They came down here from NorCal and whatnot. But so we need to create opportunities so that those people, we can get upstream basically and prevent.
Totally. And this is common knowledge for anyone who's like a housing wonk out there, but we need to build not just affordable housing, but all types of housing. And I in fact think that the government is over-rotated on trying to fund and build housing on its own. I think what the government should do is eliminate red tape and partner with developers to just get shit built. We know that if you build housing, even at the high end of the curve, like Class A housing, what that ends up doing is people who are in Class B housing move to the new housing, people who are in C move to B, people who are in D move to C. And so even building at the top creates more space for everybody to move up or run, which creates space at the bottom. So we need to build, of course, more affordable housing, that's outside of market rate. But I think in a place like San Francisco, we just need to fucking build more of everything. And we need to build it in places that make sense. I don't think that building more housing requires destroying the neighborhood character of somewhere like North Beach or some places on the west side of the city or in my neighborhood. But upzoning and up-leveling and infilling where we can. There's just, driving around the city, there's so many opportunities to do that. And I think the mayor's legacy, more than anything, over the long term, could be making San Francisco more affordable by building more places for people to live.
Yeah.
So to me, I'm just nervous about it because I don't see him. I think there's like some political cost to it in a way that there's not with the recovery stuff and the public safety stuff.
Yeah.
But I think I think great Democratic mayors, whether it's here in Chicago or New York, will be known for for building. What would you give him on the downtown stuff?
Well, again, like incomplete, because downtown's still sitting 40% vacant, and that's not his fault, right? That's why that's one of the reasons why a new mayor was elected in San Francisco, is that downtown kind of cratered, the FIDI's cratered. You go down there, we were down there a couple of weeks ago, it's still a ghost town.
Yeah.
And it's kind of sad, because it's like you hear the echoes of what it used to be for those of us that have been around the city for a minute, and to see it now is just sad. So I still don't know if, like, are they still following Breed's original plan of 30 by 30, putting a university downtown? I know that the city's ordering people back to work, which is brilliant, 4 days a week. But how do we get, and I know some companies like Salesforce, I think, is 3 days a week with their people right now. But I have a couple of friends that work at Salesforce. They hate it. So there's going to be resistance to getting people back down there.
Yeah, I'd give him a slightly higher score on this than on housing. I think the thing I'm most bullish on is like partnership for San Francisco, where he's actually engaging with major landowners, business leaders in the city, bringing them together and saying, hey, how do we work together between government and the private sector to revitalize downtown? Because it's going to take a all of the above approach. Like, I think should we open a university? Yes. Should we also build more housing? Yes. Should we figure out ways to attract people downtown for work? Yes. Like, I think there's no silver bullet. There's just 1,000 lead bullets.
Right.
And I think you got to shoot all of them. I think his focus on conferences and events is really smart. I think the downtown hospitality zone of encouraging people to come down and drink on the street is another good idea. And it's going to take throwing all that at the wall. But I think what he's doing there, that he's not doing in housing, is seemingly building like this coalition of people who have either the capital or the power to do stuff, to bring their employees back to work, to open more restaurants, to convert office to residential, and saying like, hey, what do you need from us, the government, to get this shit done?
One thing I know is, like, I do know, like, from the people that I've talked to, like on social media and in the community, those that are in the business community or maybe in real estate, commercial real estate, they're actually kind of becoming bullish on the city again, which and the tech, I think the tech sector, there's some more of that too, some excitement, right? The boom loop is coming, no more doom loop, that whole thing. I think what it is that we want things to happen like that. And I've talked to the mayor and to other people in his administration about it. And he's like, I know you want like all this treatment and recovery stuff to happen right now, but you have to understand that there's a process, and so you have to stop and breathe.
Yes, but I also think Trump has shown that there are political benefits to being aggressive, and even if it's symbolic. I think like having the NBA All-Star Game and taking credit for that, or Lurie bringing his own staff back to work to City Hall, like all of those are symbolic messaging points to show like, hey, we're doing some aggressive things really quickly that's trying to change the narrative. And I think you're right that like how people think the city is going will be self-reinforcing, because then investors, builders will make decisions based on that vibe, the positive outlook, and that will be self-reinforcing.
Right.
And I think Lurie understands that. And yeah, these things have long lead times. Like downtown housing has a long lead time. I think Lurie could be like our Bloomberg. Like I think he could be an outsider technocrat who understands actually how to get shit done. Or he could be an also-ran, where he doesn't fully understand how to pull the levers of power to get stuff done. And so far, I think he's more on the Bloomberg track, which is awesome for me and for us and for the city. But I worry that on some of these like longer, more complex issues, I wonder what's behind the scenes. He isn't really producing the kind of change that we're going to need to build, tens of thousands of more units of housing or bring hundreds of thousands of people back downtown.
Well, and I think we need to get people to trust in San Francisco again so that they'll come back.
Yeah.
That starts with the clean streets and the crime, the public safety, and all that stuff. And without any of that, then vibes only go so far, right?
Yeah.
And these goals of revitalizing downtown only go so far. So I've been cautiously optimistic since the day he won the election, because look, we can't keep doing everything piecemeal the way we were doing it before. Like, Breed would talk a really good game about stuff and then fail to execute, or only execute on one thing and not execute on the whole thing. He seems to have surrounded himself with some really smart people, where he has, and he's coming forward with plans. So I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, like I said, and I'm just super excited. Like, I'm all about homelessness and recovery and public safety. So if we can get those things, so at least the needle is moving, then I think it frees it up and makes it easier for those other things to happen.
Yeah, I think public safety is definitely the first thing that has to change,
Right.
so that people feel okay living here and okay investing here, okay working here or hiring people here. But I moved to San Francisco the first time in 2010. That was at the start of a major economic cycle where we had, more wealth created here, more jobs created here than anywhere else on earth. It was like a modern day gold rush with the internet boom. And then we lost it. We did not build enough infrastructure, enough housing, enough transit. We didn't support businesses enough, so that when the pandemic came, the cost benefit wasn't there for a lot of people, and it was just all too easy for people to leave because the city was too expensive for what they were getting from it. We didn't invest in the ways that would turn that boom into long-term growth and prosperity for the city. And now it's happening again. It's happening with AI, where if the next major economic boom, even larger than the internet perhaps, has started, and it's happening here in San Francisco. If you want to start an AI company, if you want to work at an AI company, you have to move to San Francisco right now. And so it's happening again. And I hope we learned lessons from the last time where there's going to be good vibes all around, and you can take credit for things that you didn't do as a elected official. But in order to preserve that wealth here, we got to build more housing. We got to support employers who are bringing people to the city. We have to support small businesses that are serving those workers every day. We have to figure out a way to build infrastructure that doesn't take us 7 years and $1 billion. Yeah. And of course, we have to enforce public safety. And I think he gets that. He's certainly hired people that understand that. But remains to be seen if he's able to deliver.
Speaking of small business, if you had to give him a grade on that, what would it be?
I'd give him like a B+. I was telling you this, Tom, the other day, but my business is it's a distributed team. We have people around the world, but it's headquartered here in San Francisco. And we changed the name of our product recently, and we had to file what was called a fictitious business name application. And I have never spent more time on anything, like any regulatory thing in our business, than trying to get our name changed. To do this in San Francisco, you have to file a huge application, you have to sign it with wet ink, you have to go deliver it in person, then you have to pay the San Francisco Chronicle to publicize that your business is changing names and ads over 4 to 5 weeks. Then you need an affidavit from the Chronicle. Then you need to go downtown to file the affidavit in person and pay another fee. I think this is all for a world where you're changing the name of your dry cleaner on the street. But I have a big company with a bunch of people, and I don't have time to do this. I don't understand how a small business who's just trying to make ends meet, has no time, no extra resources to spare, is supposed to get through this kind of red tape. It was fucking crazy. I was like, this is insane that I have to spend my time on this, and that not just me, but every small business owner in the city also has to do the same thing for just like a normal name change. And I think there's a ton of red tape like that for normal business processes, and I think it strangles our small business owners. I live right by Haight Street. I live right by Divisadero. And it's upsetting to see great businesses shut down because I think the rent is too high, and there's too much regulatory bullshit that they have to deal with, and it just makes it too hard to run a business. I think Lurie understands this, and I think the permit SF stuff it's one of those long-term investments that I think will pay off over the years, where just figuring out how do we make it easier for people to just get shit done so that they can focus on running their business and producing great products and services and serving their customers rather than dealing with the government. I think Democrats should be the pro-business party, the pro-small business party, the pro-growth party. I love seeing his videos of him walking up and down our major commercial corridors because I think it's great for him to understand day to day, what is it like to run a business on these streets? What are their concerns? What are their problems? And how can he be a problem solver, not a problem creator, which is what I think our City Hall normally is.
Yeah. I agree. Pretty much, right? There's too many open storefronts right now, so we need to do everything we can to incentivize small businesses to open, and that means cutting back on the permitting and all the fees and all that stuff to get them in here. I know that's an oversimplification because there's a lot more to it, but the bottom line is that, I think there's only like 5 or 6 restaurants in the city that serve dinner after 10 o'clock now. Little things like that.
Yeah.
That actually make a difference, that if we brought more small businesses in, then we could kind of revitalize San Francisco from what it was maybe in 2010.
Yeah, I think, Breed always said the right things, and she was a great speaker, but it never really felt like government was on your side during her administration or the administration before that. was too easy to think like, hey, do they actually care about how high my rent is, or do they care about my feeling of safety when I'm walking home from dinner? Do they care about how expensive the coffee is, or do they care about like whether or not my company can hire people here? It was just like, do they even fucking care about me? Yeah. Like it felt like the government was an opponent or opposed to us, the public, rather than on our side. And with Lurie on all these things, it just feels like he's trying to make government part of the solution, not part of the problem. And that's so cheesy to say, but it just like on a very fundamental, basic level every day with things like housing, safety, the cost of living here. Like it just felt like government was the thing that was making those problems worse, not making them better. Mm-hmm. And it feels like with Lurie, in small ways and big, he is turning the ship.
I agree. I mean, it definitely feels, the feels are different. And I know we were going to kind of wait to talk about the vibes.
Let's talk about the vibes.
But yeah, look, breath of fresh air, new guy, new administration. Look, there was an air of corruption in this city.
Yeah.
There's no denying it. What happened at the Human Rights Commission and the Department of Public Works with Mr. Clean and what's her name, Zuniga, and all those people that got indicted. The head of the PUC went to federal prison. I mean, that's crazy. That all happened on Breed's watch. And of course, Breed defended it, saying, well, I'm the one that rooted all that corruption in my administration. No, you were really tight with all of those people.
Yeah, it was the FBI.
It was like the FBI did all that. So, yeah. That's super refreshing that we're kind of leaving that behind. As much as good intentions she may have had, we're leaving that behind. And I don't think Lurie's not that kind of guy, man. I just don't feel like. So I feel like just right there, that's a win. Yeah. And then he's talking to the right people. He's talked to you, he talks to me, he talks to other members of the recovery community. He's not, he's not wedded to things like harm reduction only, and he understands that we need some public safety. He's working with the police department, all these different things that were very performative with the previous mayor. Actually seems like he's committed to it now, so I'm stoked.
Yeah, I know this. I mean, this video might come back to bite us in the ass in a year from now if we're so positive on him and then he doesn't deliver. Right. And I would condition all this on like, is this man and his team going to produce results for us? Because if he doesn't, people are going to turn. We're going to turn. Right. But I think from the moment I met him for the first time, what is super clear is just how earnest and authentic and normal he is. Like there was a photo of him at a homelessness task force recently. And I was thinking to myself, like, if you asked a random person who in this room is the mayor, like nobody would pick him because he just seems like a normal guy. And I think that is to his benefit. He's obviously has a lot of power. He is independently wealthy. Like he has no need for this job, so he can make good decisions. But he just comes across as somebody that's likable. And I think that's changed his relationship to the Board of Supervisors. So much didn't get done during Breed's term because the board hated Breed and Breed hated the board. And they just wanted to spite each other by spiking the other's initiatives. And so the city lost in that case. We lost on progress. And I think the fact that Lurie has showed up to board members' events, that he goes on tours of neighborhoods with the board, like that it has just changed the the dynamic of City Hall, that we're now all on the same team, the mayor, the board, and the public. Like it's us against the problem, not opposed to each other. I think in particular, like for someone who's kind of awkward, like he sometimes can be, like his communication approaches and methods have been, I think, like really innovative and on the mark. Like his videos, I don't know why. I mean, I probably watch a lot of SF content, but like he's always in my feed. But my friends also talk about him too. And like his man on the street videos, his videos from his desk, like, yeah, the earnestness comes through, I think, to his benefit, that he's like not, the most charismatic. He's not Gavin Newsom. He's not like, you don't feel like he's pulling the wool over your eyes. Right. But I love that he's bringing people into the process. He's sharing updates on what he's doing, his perspective on things. Like it feels like you're on the journey with him. Right. In tech, we call this building in public. Right. But it feels like he's building in public, and that builds trust through transparency. And I think a bunch of the board of supervisors have also picked this up too. And it feels totally different to have elected officials who are actually communicating with their constituents versus, Breed. It felt very impenetrable. Like you were afraid to ask her a question because she was going to yell at you or something.
And it felt transactional too. Like, what are you going to do for me?
Yep.
Kind of thing. And that's not the way it is with Lurie in his office. And, I don't want to gush too much about the guy because, like you said, it's only been a couple of months, right? Yeah. But I think we're just excited that something different's happening in the city instead of the same old. Which kind of brings us to national
Yeah.
politics, man.
Yeah.
There's a lot going. It's definitely not same old in DC right now, and it's not same old with the Democrats. And look, we're both Democrats. I've said that publicly for a long time. I voted for Michael Dukakis in 1988. That was the first guy I voted for, and I voted Democrat ever since. And this is the first time where I feel kind of disaffected by their messaging and by the people that they're putting up. And, and it just, I think a lot of people that maybe are moderate independents kind of felt that way in November and kind of feel that way now. And you can kind of see that reflected in their approval rating being down, and they seem to be lacking leadership. And then here comes a guy like, these guys like Ezra Klein and people like that start talking about an abundance agenda, and all of a sudden, like, I perked up a little bit.
Yeah.
So what is that? What is that looking like for you?
Yeah, well, I think we're bullish on Lurie because I'm bullish on Lurie not just for San Francisco, but for national Democrats, because often San Francisco has been ahead of the curve, and California as well, both for good things and for bad things, compared to what happens later nationally. Like, I think our inability to build housing, our inability to support businesses, our inability to allow for multiple perspectives and over-embrace woke, that happened first, fastest and most in San Francisco and California, and it's redounded across the country. And I think the fact that there's silver linings in places like San Francisco and California and New York means, like, in a couple years, those lessons will start to filter to our national party. Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson live in New York. I mean, these are where I think there's a new spring coming for Democrats in places like this. But of course, nationally, it's super fucking embarrassing and frustrating to watch our response to Trump. I think what Ezra, I love Ezra, love it. I think, there's no public intellectual more on the money right now than Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson with their new book. But I think what Ezra has been saying for a long time is two things. One, in terms of policy, like, Democrats haven't delivered in places where we control the political apparatus. We haven't delivered in California, in San Francisco, in New York. And if we can't show that places, especially those places with, like, the most resources, the most power, the most money of anywhere, if we can't produce great outcomes there for people, why should anyone trust us nationally? And, this was when people were flooding Newsom for Biden's replacement. People were like, well, no one wants America to be California. And I think that's a problem. Like, we want California to be better than America. We want it to be an example for the rest of America. Here's what's possible. Right. And right now it's not. What America wants to be is Texas. And, like, for good reason. I mean, it's cheap to live there. There's a ton of jobs. You can get shit done easily if you're an entrepreneur or a small business owner.
Tax rates are lower.
Yeah, I mean, it's working. And it's working in Florida. It's working in Tennessee and in North Carolina and even in Nevada and Arizona. I mean, that's where the population is growing. And this is a huge problem for Democrats, because when the 2030 census comes along, blue states are going to lose electoral votes. They're going to lose House seats. And so even if Kamala, even if a future Democrat was to win all the states again, and even some of the swing states, they still wouldn't get to 270, because we now need to figure out how to win in places like North Carolina, Florida, Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, but really that Sun Belt. And so California and New York have to be better than the country, and I think we have to deliver there. At the same time, I think what's frustrating for a lot of us is, like, in this kind of zero-sum macho environment that Trump has created, like, the Democrats look weak. We look, and, like, you can advocate for centrist moderate positions substantively that deliver on basic things like housing and jobs, and oppose the administration on its tactics, and on its approach and its messaging. I don't think that there's any benefit to collaborating with the Republicans. I wouldn't even call Trump a Republican. I think what he is something totally different. I think he's, like, a fascist authoritarian. Like, this is not a normal Republican administration. This is an administration that is disregarding the rule of law, disregarding other co-equal branches of government, disregarding whole groups of people. I mean, it's testing the whole theory that, like, hey, we're going to do what we want, and no one can fucking stop us. And I think Democrats have to say no. Like, we will oppose you on everything, so that we can have a chance to take back some reins of power and show people that we can do better on the core things. And frankly, I think the problems that Trump speaks about are real. The cost of living is too high. There isn't enough manufacturing in this country. the cost of healthcare is too high, the cost of childcare is too high, education isn't good enough. These are, we have a problem at the southern border. These are all real problems, but Trump's answer to those things is more scarcity. It's to say, hey, the pie is too small, and so let's debate over who gets what share. And I think his answer is white men should get the biggest share, and immigrants and trans people should get nothing. But I think the counterpoint to that is not to, as Democrats, say like, oh, we think the pie should be divided up differently. It's to advocate for a bigger pie. And I think that's what Ezra and Derek are talking about, is that the right response is like an asymmetric one. It's not to be cold to Trump's hot. It's to propose a different type of solution, which is like, what if government actually worked? What if we were to use the wheels and levers of government to produce more housing and produce lower cost healthcare and produce lower cost childcare? I think we're going to keep bouncing back and forth who has the reins of power until one of the two parties figures out how to solve these problems, how to provide low-cost public goods for people. Yeah. And it's not going to be the Republicans, because we know the Republicans don't want government. They don't think any government should exist. And so it has to be the Democrats that figure this out. And so, I just hope I think it's partly like blending good substantive approaches to how do we provide a lower cost of living for everybody in this country so that everybody has a fair chance to get ahead, which is what we Democrats believe, while also just opposing Trump in every way possible. And it feels like we're not getting either right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I feel as, my iron isn't as hot as yours on some of this stuff. And I'll tell you why. Look, he was right about the border, right? Biden, 12 million people crossed the border while he was president, and Biden sat there, and every Democratic politician sat there and gaslit us all and said, we can't close it without legislation. And the dude comes in, and 2 months later, there's like 800 people crossing the border, and fentanyl busts on the Mexico side are down 75% because the cartel has stopped smuggling, because they're out there arresting and deporting and extraditing the cartel, leaders of the cartels back to the United States. Like, he was right about that, right? And I think that's one big issue. And I think the other big issue where it was like, look, the Democrats got carried away a little bit, I think, in 2020, 2021 around cancel culture, right? Canceling people. If you don't use the right pronouns, you lose your job. There's instances where that had happened. And I think that normal Americans are just kind of like, what the fuck? If I don't want to say my pronouns, I shouldn't be obligated to do so. And that just fed this machine, this Republican machine that was just like on the march the whole time, with podcasting and social media, and then Elon Musk joining the fray, right, with the third largest social media platform on the planet, and they just marched like right across America, and they won the election. And I just think that I'm with you on almost everything you said. I just want the Democrats to stop and acknowledge that they fucked up on a few of these things, because they still won't do it. Right? Which means we need new leadership that will actually admit that they made some mistakes and then commit to changing and realigning their platform to adjust so that those things don't happen again. And then let's get on with the business of building America. Right?
Well, I think that's kind of our not so secret goal of this podcast, is the Republicans own the information environment right now, especially for low propensity, low involvement voters. And it used to be in the Obama era that high turnout elections meant that Democrats would have an advantage. Now, in 2024, high turnout elections mean Republicans have an advantage, because people who are nominally interested only come out to vote in presidential elections. They're tuning into right-leaning podcasts or entertainers. There was a chart recently on Twitter that showed bubbles of like the biggest podcasts, and like 75% of them were red. We don't have enough regular people who are smart but entertaining, who can connect with Democrats or even independents and share our side of the story. And that's probably what we're trying to do here a little bit, is,
or moderate Democrats, right? So it's like there's
people who are not involved.
There's like really far left folks, like in San Francisco, you've got like this Democratic socialists, and then you have the uber progressives, and then you have the progressives, and then you have the moderates. There's no Republicans here. I think there's like 8,000 Republicans and out of 850,000 people in the city. So the worst you're going to get is light blue. So we need to appeal to that entire base so that they can reunify. Because I think that with the light blue folks, there was maybe some of them stayed home this election, or maybe they voted for Kamala, but they did it holding their nose because they didn't like some of the things that were happening. So I think it's just really important at a national level for the Democrats to figure out a clear agenda and come forward that can not only resonate with high-level folks, but with just your regular, everyday, blue-collar, what's left of them
I
folks,
think,
you know?
My prediction is whoever wins in 2028 is not going to be a Democrat. We have heard a lot about right now. I think like most national Democrats are totally tainted and should be unelectable. Like I think Kamala is done. I think Newsom is done. You know, even someone like Pete is like, he's a great communicator, but he's like, has he been part of the problem? Like maybe. I think it's a good call for him to not run for the Senate in Michigan and take a couple years off. Let's miss him a little bit so he can come back fresh.
Somebody new will come out, which is...
In tech, we have a saying that the person who best describes a problem is often the most trusted with the solution. And I think if you look at someone like Rogan, he's an exceptional communicator. He's incredibly trustworthy. And how he frames the problems, or how Donald Trump frames the problems, even if Trump has no good solutions, you trust in his messaging. And I think Democrats need people from outside the system who seem normal and common sense to come in and say, you know, here's how we see the problem, and therefore here's what we're going to do. And, you know, the one point I disagree with you on is that Democrats should apologize. You know, as I said, like, I totally agree that we went too far.
Yeah.
Every party in power goes too far.
Yeah.
Like, Trump is going to go too far. He is already too far in fucking everything. But, you know, I am still, despite the hot mess that is our like national party, the dysfunction there, like I'm still a Democrat because I still believe that everybody should get a fair shot in America. And I think like, I don't believe in equal outcomes, but I believe in equal opportunity. And I think like I think everyone should have a shot at the American dream. Yeah. And I think to do that, you need access to low quality, high cost education, healthcare, childcare, housing, jobs. And I think the Republican Party believes like everybody's out for themselves and like there's no benefit. Working together has no benefits. So go fuck yourself. I'm gonna get mine, you know, and like that's the end of the story. Like, and I just don't believe that. Like at my moral core, I don't think that's how we like survive as a species. I think there's more benefits to working together on problems than going it alone. And I think that's what the Democratic Party is all about. We have to get back to that. And I don't think we should be apologizing for that. I think there's a way to frame it in a way that's with the times and that like talks about the problems in the right way. Yeah. But like I worry that some people are like, oh, well, the Democrats are losing, and so like the theory of their case is wrong. When I think like the core message is still good. Like the beliefs are there. I think the better of the two outcomes. That's what I believe in. You know, I wouldn't be. People make fun of Elizabeth Warren all the time. I'm a big fan still, but like she made a point years ago that like. She didn't build the roads that she drives on. She didn't build the Wi-Fi networks that she uses every day. She didn't build the university that she went to school at. Like it takes a fucking village to succeed as an individual, and we all benefit from the hard work of other people. We stand on the shoulders of the people that came before us, and like it's our responsibility to keep doing that. And it's like the golden rule, and I believe that, and that's why I don't think we should be apologizing for that. I think we should be as obstinate and as aggressive about that message as Trump is about his.
I'm down with that message being aggressive. I just think that there are certain fringy aspects of the Democratic Party from the far progressive left that got way too much mainstream.
100%.
Way too much mainstream, and they like we need to like, you know, kick them off the planet to the sun, you know, or to Mars. Just be like, look, y'all can go hang with the Democratic Socialists and try to grow your party and run and get some seats, and let's have a three-party system like the United Kingdom has multiple parties and all these other parliamentary countries, right? Go ahead and do it, but you can't be here with that wild wackadoo message that really alienates all the moderates in your base. And a recent poll came out that 42% of Democratic voters want the Democratic Party to move more to the center. Yep. And I just don't know. They're stuck. If they, and then 57% want them to go after Trump even harder, right? Okay, but so they're stuck. So is that 42% going to go along with that when they go harder, or are they going to kind of sit back and be like, maybe I want you to collaborate and work with the Republicans more? And so the question then becomes not who's right or wrong, it's whether or not the party can win national elections.
And I think actually, if you look at the data, there's no center/left party in the Western world that has won more elections as a percent of the total than the American Democratic Party. And so we are actually pretty good at winning elections, and we tend to get in line when we do. Even you could say more than the Republicans sometimes do. I think there was an over-rotation in the Biden years where he capitulated too much to left groups. I think that was in part from the Trump years where everybody was so apoplectic, like out of their fucking minds about Trump, that we over-rotated on opposing him.
Well, they're going out of their mind again. It's starting again, but...
Yeah, and I think, I think that someone called it on Twitter combative centrism, that like we need to figure out a way to combine these like, let's fix the basics, deliver on the fundamentals, policy positions with like, let's not forget that, like, let's fucking go up against this guy who's basically upending our democracy, if not destroying it. Like, it's hard to not get so upset about everything he does. I think a lot of it we can reverse. The stuff I worry about the most is the degradation of our norms, of how we treat each other, of how we treat our partners. It takes, like a marriage, it takes years to build trust, and like, one bad fight, one moment of one instance of cheating to tear it all apart. And that's what it feels. You mentioned fentanyl at the border. Like, I think being an asshole to our closest allies can produce results in the short term. But like, at what cost to long-term trust and cooperation? That's what I worry about.
Well, I agree with you especially on tariffs. So they haven't implemented tariffs in Mexico. They've been using the threat of tariffs with Mexico.
Is okay,
Okay, but Canada they have, and even I have to I think moderates all across the board. I'm kind of a moderate liberal. We are all scratching our heads. Like, why are you fucking with Canada? What did they ever
Republicans
do to you?
I think are questioning this. Like, it's
what did they ever do to you? I mean, it's Canada. It's not a big deal, right? So we got bigger fish to fry. So I don't know what's going on with that, but I think the longer that goes on, and him going off on these tangents about the 51st state thing is going to come back to bite him, and he should just stop and move on to bigger things. We have bigger fish to fry than whether or not we're going to buy Canadian lumber or Canadian whiskey.
Well, that's, we talked about him for long enough. I think both of my approach to all this is like, there's nothing I can do about him nationally. And so what's exciting is to be living in a place where my party does have basically complete control, and where me, even as an individual person, can do something about what happens here. And I think we have an opportunity with Lurie and hopefully with Newsom to get some shit done and show that like we deserve to win national elections again. And we have 2 to 4 years to get some data, to get some proof points, to make an argument to other places, to red states, to purple states, that like you should trust us. And I think the data is not going to come from Ohio or from Texas. The data is going to come from, those examples are going to come from California and from New York. Right. And so like we have work to do here, and it's exciting to see our progress. But like that's, I think the nervous optimism we all feel is like, hey, it feels like we're turning a corner. Yeah, we're just 2 months into a new day here in San Francisco. But like, can we follow through? Can we make it happen? Because we have 3 or 4 decades of all of these, vacuous, like empty talking points. People saying, "Oh, like we work together and we'll come together and we're one." And everyone just bragging about how much money we're spending. Right. We need to actually show that we can produce results.
We need to show that our leaders need to show that they can govern, because there's a lot of people that have been in office prior to this that never they didn't know how to govern. They never had a real job.
Yeah,
it's
professional politicians.
Professional politicians. They started out as a community organizer. That's not a real job, man.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's not a real job.
I agree, 100%.
It's like, dude, so you might have the college degree, but you need that life experience. And when you start working as a politician inside City Hall, I think you told me this before, you're in a bubble, man. It's a different world.
Yeah, well, you're in a system where the incentives are to repeat the party line, because you think like the way to get promoted is to basically, the guy above me gets promoted like it's someone like a Soviet system, and then I'm going to take his chair, and so I want him to like me, so I'm going to say the same shit as him. And so you don't have an incentive to think about if what you're saying is right or wrong, or good or bad, or works or doesn't. Your incentive is to make the people around you like you. And so it just starts to disconnect from the public.
What did they call that? The Politburo. We don't need a Politburo, man. So,
it feels like the Communist Party of San Francisco sometimes.
No, we don't need that. So.
Yeah, I think it's also helpful to have people from the outside world who, have like managed teams and like balanced P&Ls.
Right.
And try to sell something to people. Like these are valuable skills. I don't think like a government is like a business. It plays a very different role, but I think it's helpful to have people from different backgrounds who know how to get shit done, who then go into government and work for people. And
Agreed.
so that's why I'm happy Lurie took the plunge. I wouldn't want his job, to be honest, but
No. But I've got his back, and I think we both
we got
do.
his back.
We got his back. So let's see what happens. Like, it's a new day in San Francisco, so we should all kind of take a deep breath and kind of exhale, and let's see where it all goes.
It's a good note to end on. For anyone out there who's made it this far, thanks for watching. We're going to have a bunch of guests on Fast Times podcast in the coming weeks, so we'd love to hear from you in the comments who you'd like us to sit down with. We can basically get to anyone in San Francisco. So whether it's a leader in tech or some elected official, we'd love to hear who you'd like us to sit down and chat with. It's going to be informal and fun like this the whole time. So excited to hear what you think. Thanks for watching, and see you soon.
See ya.